Hi everybody, this is Colin Murphy and welcome to Torcana Podcast 23. So following on from the great response to our last episode with local Tampa entrepreneur and real estate investor Tom Goebel, today I've invited another real estate expert to speak to us about his business and career. So James Vestal is an associate broker with Marcus and Millichap in Tampa, and he's an expert in apartment and multifamily investments. So I think this is going to be an interesting show, a little bit of a twist from our usual single family focused shows, and I hope you enjoy it. So James, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Colin. Doing well.
All right. So listen, tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate.
My career kind of started back in 2006. I came to Tampa as a student at the University of Tampa, where I received my master's in business administration. And right afterwards, I came to work for Marcus and Millichap as a commercial real estate broker. It was in the depths of the recession, and I kind of had to learn the business from the ground up from there.
It's good that they were still hiring in the depths of the recession. That says something, at least, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely an experience. I didn't close my first deal for over a year. I had several people throw me out of their office and yell at me. It was that environment was a great learning environment. It was about as close to, I guess, financial Armageddon as you can imagine, especially in a market like Tampa that was particularly hard hit. We saw decreases in value anywhere from 40 to 60% in local apartments, and a lot of people just didn't know how to deal with it. So I kind of gained a lot of experience crafting my business around advisement and really trying to give my clients at that time the best advice I could on how to navigate either a short sale or how to hold on to their property as best they could and weather the recession.
Okay, and when you say your clients, who do you mean? Do you mean owners of apartment complexes, multifamily portfolios? What kind of people are you? Would you consider to be your clients? What do you do for them?
Yeah, so my clients are owners and operators of multifamily properties, anywhere from 6 to 8 units on the small end, up to 200-unit apartment complexes. I also advise people in things outside of apartments that are in the multifamily realm, such as mobile home parks, fractured condo deals. I've sold several of those. I've sold condo construction deals, multifamily construction deals. So the array of multifamily products, I've done most of them.
Okay, that's great. And so let's assume that a lot of our listeners are thinking about investing in real estate, but they haven't really decided whether they should go for single family or multifamily. I mean, what, in your opinion, are the key differences between both those categories?
They're actually both good investments. They just serve different functions in the rental market. One of the advantages you have in single-family homes is you have a diversification aspect. So you've got a lot smaller pot of money in one investment, and if you need to discharge that investment in order to get some cash out, you're afforded that kind of flexibility, whereas you wouldn't be afforded that in the multifamily realm. But the advantages that you have with multifamily are, you've got the economies of scale, which, if you have 10 apartment units all in one building, then you're only talking about one roof, and you're only talking about 1 yard. So your expenses on that aspect are much lower on a per unit basis. So you do kind of get that economies of scale aspect. And your taxes tend to be lower on multifamily investments. Your real estate taxes, they just are tend not to be valued as high as some single-family homes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how about the cash flow? Do you find that differs a lot on average, the rental income earned?
Not, it really depends on the market and also, what kind of grade property we're talking about, whether it's an A through D class. But the cash flow tends to be similar, except in times of dramatic changes going on in whatever submarket there is. So another advantage of single-family homes is if you bought a single-family home in an area that maybe tended to be more for renters, and it has since changed, you have a very convenient exit plan to actually sell it to an end user who will buy it as a personal home,
sure,
and not as rental anymore. So there's that aspect as well.
That's true enough, because if you're a multifamily owner and you want to sell, you're going to have to sell to another investor. But if you're a single-family landlord, you have the option of selling to another investor or putting it on the open market and selling it to an owner-occupier, right? So you have that extra exit strategy, I guess, to help balance the extra hassle for dealing with lots of different roofs and lots of different kitchens and HVACs and all the rest of it, that you don't have the economies of scale, but maybe one extra exit strategy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And part of the beneficial side of that is the lending that's involved in single-family homes. You tend to have a much larger amount of choices as far as how to leverage your asset, or if you're selling it to a single user, there may be programs in place that can help that buyer purchase your property from you that you wouldn't be afforded if you were selling it to another investor in an apartment. So
okay. So how would somebody go about, let's say they want to source a 5 to 20 unit opportunity? Where would they find them? Because you don't typically, you want to find a single family home, you look on Zillow, you look on Craigslist, you look on the MLS, you might look at some Hubzu or some public auctions, or you might send some letters. So but it's not quite like that in the commercial space. How do you go about sourcing, if you want to buy a 10 unit, 12 unit complex, what's the best way to find these?
Yeah, one of the main differences between commercial and single-family homes is we don't have the MLS. We don't have anything like that. And there are some online resources like LoopNet and CoStar that you can find online, and you can find a wide swath of property types and things like that, and we do utilize that, but the main reason why you find commercial properties out in the larger realm is because commercial brokers like myself are actually looking to qualify buyers, and when you put it out on such a large space, you do have people coming in that may be very interested in purchasing property but may not be able to. And so we have to do our best to kind of sift through what qualified buyers are out there and how to get them into the deal.
So you're saying if somebody comes to you, a seller comes to you with 20 units that they want to sell, you're not necessarily just going to put it out there and let everybody kind of take up your time. You want to pre-qualify the buyers so that you're not getting deals tied up with tire kickers or people that don't have the wherewithal to make it happen. You want to make sure that they're qualified first.
Yeah, absolutely. And the flip side of that too is, so in this kind of logic is actually reflected in the real estate law here in the state of Florida. You actually lose protections purchasing commercial properties as opposed to single-family homes, because the law assumes that when you're purchasing these investments that you're savvier and higher skilled, and it really becomes important at that point, when you're looking for these, to find professionals that can help you. The landscape of investment is very much more complex on multiple levels, not only in the due diligence phase, but certainly in the lending phase, in the value phase, determining value and determining, your future value are all aspects of investment in commercial that really have much more complex implications as you enter the market.
Okay, so going on from that, I mean, I agree. If you're buying 10 or 20 units, you need to be a lot savvier and a lot more aware of what you need to do. So can you talk us through the due diligence professional investors would undertake when they're preparing to buy a small apartment complex or a large multifamily? I mean, it's obviously a higher level of professionalism than people that are just accumulating, 2 or 3 single families every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing you really need to do is find someone and create a relationship with someone, a broker within the market that you're interested in, and research that person's experience. So making sure that they've been in the commercial real estate realm for a few years, that they've sold some quality deals, and have them help you navigate the market landscape. And those types of people can basically tell you, these are the growing submarkets. This is where we see, this is where we're going to see the most value add. These are the kind of demographic changes that we're seeing and the kind of growth that we're seeing within each area of that respected market. And that knowledge is probably your first step in really doing your quote-unquote due diligence as far as what you're trying to accomplish. Once you negotiate the deal and you get into the deal and you get it under contract, unless you have an extensive background in construction and you feel fairly confident that you can do an inspection on your own, I always tell almost all my clients that they should hire a professional inspector, and that's just because you need eyes and ears on someone who's familiar with a lot of these properties, who have seen a lot of these properties, and can kind of point out exactly what's wrong with them. And after you get through inspections, you take your broker and you sit down and you look at the financials. You want to look at the historical financials. You want to take those. So
what do you mean by historical financials? What's in that?
So what I mean by that is you want to look at a profit and loss statement or a cash flow statement from the property from the last year to 2 years. And you want to see how it's changed. Sometimes that will tell you a very interesting story about the investment that you're buying. And not only does it give you an idea of what your fixed expenses are, but it might also give you an idea of the kinds of rental challenges that the owner has seen over time, or it might also point out management opportunities that you can take to further increase the value of the property you're buying. So you kind of take those financials and records, and you identify those things which are both problems and opportunities, and you also look at you review liens, judgments, code violations. You want to make sure that what flood zone it's in, if there's sinkholes, the age of the building and the neighborhood are also very important. I would never tell anyone not to buy an old building. I would just say it depends on what neighborhood you're buying this old building in. Some old buildings are actually worth a lot of money if they're in historic districts because they get higher rents than others. So it just kind of depends on exactly what you're looking for. And you kind of take that in during the due diligence process, and almost every deal I've done, except maybe bank deals, we have what we call in the business a retrade. And when you get into this phase, you basically point out to the seller, this is the stuff we didn't know when we wrote our offer on the property, and we are asking for X amount of money off the price because almost all commercial properties you buy as is. You do not, the seller does not fix or upgrade or do anything to the property at time of sale. And you just monetize problems that's what we call it. We monetize the problem.
Can you give me some examples of the typical problems you encounter and what discounts you get for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a typical problem is like a roof issue. So maybe most sellers are not up on their roofs, and they will assume their roof is just fine as long as there's not a leak. But get an inspector up there, they might find there's an area where there's pooling of water occurring, which is an early sign of degradation of the roof itself. That needs to be addressed and either patched or fixed. And, the inspector will kind of give you a ballpark idea of this is how much it costs to fix. Let's just say, let's throw a round number out there, $15,000.
Right.
Then you kind of talk to your broker and you talk about the motivations of the seller, and you try to figure out, how much of this $15,000 the seller would be willing to eat. And, maybe the seller will say, I'll eat none of it. And then you have to make a business decision from there.
Sure.
Or seller will say, I'll meet you in the middle. I'll pay, $7,500 of it. Or they may say, if they're really motivated, we'll pay it all. So it just kind of depends on the situation. But when you get into the retrade,
deferred maintenance kind of issues with like roof problems, potholes, pools that need repaired, or apartments that are missing appliances, is that the kind of stuff you usually ask for discounts on?
It depends. It depends on if you knew it when you wrote the offer. So a pothole is going to be noticeable when you show up to the property. If you walk through a unit before you write your offer and you see it's missing appliances, then yes, absolutely, that won't be included because you noticed there weren't appliances there. But anything that we didn't know at the time when we wrote our offer that can affect value, those things are the things that you generally that's called a good retrade. But in all actuality, there will always be a retrade. Someone will almost always come back and ask for something for some reason. But if it has, most of the time, when I see them, retrades are successful is when they actually are based in fact. So
okay. And so tell me, what are the management challenges of taking care of tenants in small apartment complex versus tenants in regular single-family homes? Because it is different, I guess. I mean, in one sense, the property manager has all his people in the same building, so easy to manage from that point of view for calling out for repairs or whatever else. But what challenges are there for multifamily or apartments? What's different about them?
Yeah, so it's a huge difference, and the biggest reason behind that is actually tenant-to-tenant communication. A lot of my clients call this the ecosystem of their property, and it has a lot to do with the balance of people that they have in there. And generally speaking, the more people you have with a similar lifestyle, the better everyone gets along. So you don't want to have, half your property be elderly people and then half your property be 20-somethings, playing their loud music at night. It really makes for a very bad ecosystem on your property. So, you try to get a good mix of everyone and just try to really find a balance. The most important I can tell you is probably in the screening process. And screening your tenants is of the utmost importance. It's better to pass over 4 or 5 tenants to find that one good one, because you can get one bad tenant that comes in and it can really sour the rest of the property. People, you can have a mass exodus. I've actually seen that before. I've had an owner call me and tell me that, they want to sell because they just had half their property leave because they found he's had a guy that he's been trying to evict for 2 months that's been dealing drugs. So, those sorts of aspects are challenging. which is why it's really important not only either if you're managing it yourself to be a seasoned manager, depending on what type of property this is, or having a seasoned manager working for you. And those people are worth their weight in gold. They'll really be able to sift through potential tenants and look for issues previously discussed, like lifestyle differences and those sorts of things.
That's a really interesting difference, because let's say you've got 5 houses spread around the neighborhood and one of them is a really bad tenant. They're just really going to cause problems with that house, and you're going to have vacancies and money issues with that house. But if you had a 5-plex or a 7-plex and one was a bad tenant who was into criminal activity, I mean, it could literally affect the income on all the other units, which is a whole other thing.
Absolutely. So another thing to keep in mind too is these problems become less and less the higher grade property you have. Of course, if you have an A grade property, the chances of something like that happening are a lot less than, say, a C or D grade property. Mm-hmm. But one really important aspect you want to look at in whatever market you're in is how long it takes to evict people. Here in Tampa, I have a service that I always recommend whose average day to evict someone is 28 days. Mm-hmm. That is phenomenal. That's extremely fast. I've had other owners who do it themselves that claim they can get them out in 12 days, as little as 12 days. So, really knowing how
I don't know
to
how
get
they do that other than just giving them money to leave. 12 days is pretty quick.
They've said that actually one of the guys who told me that what they do is they will literally take the sheriff's order, and normally what happens is the sheriffs will put the order either in the mail or in a message service over to the court, and then it goes in a big pile, and the court does this and that, and takes them 3 weeks to get to it. I've had a guy who will literally go pick up the order from the sheriff's office themselves and march it over to the courthouse and put it in the judge's bin directly. Wow. So it gets seen right away. And
that's proactive.
So I mean, yeah, it's very proactive. But when you've got a problem tenant and you can be on the ground, it makes sense to do so. So
okay,
yeah. So those are the kind of practical differences.
And just continuing that theme then, I mean, what other practical differences, aside from the price, are there between Class A, B, C, D properties? I mean, everybody knows Class A is really expensive and Class D is cheaper, but you've lower quality tenants. But can you elaborate a little bit on the real world differences between Class A, B, and C? Because sometimes people kind of fixate on one particular class, but I think they'd appreciate some sort of elaboration as to what actually the differences are.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely. So let's talk about the most high risk investment in the multifamily in the apartment realm. And those are C and D properties, and I've seen owners make upwards of 20% returns in those neighborhoods. But what they have to do that is they are extremely good at screening. They are extremely good at making sure their tenants all get along, and they're extremely good at collecting money. And I'm sorry, I'm getting that click there. And so when you kind of combine those skills, a lot of these tenants will pay them in cash, which can be an advantage. A lot of these tenants will when you get very dedicated tenants that you've really created a good environment in these challenging neighborhoods, a lot of these tenants don't want to leave, so they take particularly good care of your property, and they will. I've had one guy tell me his tenants are so good that they call him on payday and say, "Come get the rent."
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, if you work at it, and you really get a system down, you can be very successful in challenging neighborhoods and do very, very well. As you get into the higher class properties, the cap rates get lower because your management costs and your time are less. So you're going to run into less problems. You're going to have a higher quality tenant. You're going to have tenants that tend not to be at home a lot. A lot of them you'd be working, full-time jobs and sometimes extremely busy people. Mm-hmm. And so, you're basically just going to receive your rent either in the mail or electronically. So those are kind of the main differences. You will find that in the higher end properties, when things get fixed, you're expected to have a higher level of service. So people are going to expect you to be there the same day to fix something, right. The same or next day. And when you get into C&D properties, you can, I've had a lot of owners say when I won't have people even point stuff out to me because it'll let it go a week and then I show up and they say, hey, this needs to be fixed. So it's just a little bit of a difference as far as the ecosystem that we talked about before. But each kind of has its ups and downs and its positives and negatives.
Okay, so let's pivot a little bit, James, to financing. Because that is one of the biggest differences between commercial and residential. Can you talk to us about how financing is different for commercial versus residential investments?
Sure. So the first major difference that you'll notice is, sometimes when you buy a single-family home, you'll get a seller asking for a pre-qualification letter, from your bank. I'm pre-qualified for up to this or that. We don't have that in commercial real estate. There is no pre-qualification letter. What happens is you will, after you get into a deal, you will get a letter called a term sheet, and that is kind of your pre-qualification, but it already you get it after you've already found your property. Another major difference is that, commercial loans are much higher risk for a bank because they're much larger dollar amounts.
Sure.
So you see higher loan to value, or the loan to value tends to be lower. So you'll need to bring anywhere from 20 to 30% down. Mm-hmm. If you're a foreign national investing in the U.S., you may have to bring up to 35 to 40% down. There are, for your foreign national listeners, there are resources here in the U.S. that we can get you in contact with that will finance your deal. You don't have to buy property all cash, but you will face not as quality of terms as an American citizen would. So just be prepared for that. But
and so for a regular American investor that's looking at $1 million deal, let's say, so you're saying they would get 60 or 70 to 80% loan to value on a commercial loan?
Yeah. So you're going to need anywhere from, in $1 million deal, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 down.
Will the owners or will the sellers ask for a proof of funds of that deposit then, if they're not going to want the pre-qualification letter? Will they want to see that they've got enough liquidity to pay for a deposit?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the owner won't even ask for it. The broker should ask for it. If the broker doesn't ask you for it, they're not a very experienced broker. Right. It's one of the first pre-qualification hurdles that I put in front of any buyer. Is I'm not even going to show up to a property to show it to you, which also is a different aspect in single family homes. You have a buy side. You have your realtor. You show up to a house and there's a little lockbox. We don't even use lockboxes to see my inventory. You have to come make an appointment with me, and I come out and meet you individually, or I meet your broker, depending on the situation. And that's one of the key differences there. And I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to qualify you as I talk to you. I'm going to say, tell me about yourself. How do you what business are you in? And then I'm going to also ask you, after you write your offer, or I'm going to tell you, if you send over a written offer, please send proof of funds for the down payment with it. and that will be of vital importance. I'm also going to ask you about financing. I'm going to say, do you have a lender already? If you are working with us here at Marcus and Millichap, we're already going to have a lender lined up if it's financeable. We do all that pre-qualifying stuff before we even put it out on the market, and that's one of the advantages of doing a deal through us is we have an in-house mortgage broker who actually shops our deals before we even find a buyer for them and gets lenders to actually to commit to general terms of a loan.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's awesome.
You will.
So, let's say, a single-family home investor, they're usually looking at 80% loan to value, 30-year fixed terms, and interest rates in the high 4s, low 5s. What are the equivalents for a commercial loan?
So equivalents are, you're going to bring 20 to 30% down. You're going to get a loan amount depending on the quality of the product. So if it's an A through C class, anywhere from mid 4s to high 4s to mid 5s to high 5s. So somewhere in there, so 4.5 to 5.75.
So pretty similar interest rates than conventional loans then.
Yep. Your amortization will be the best you're going to get is 25 year. Mm-hmm. And then you will get 20 year. The lower in the amortization schedule you go, the better interest rate you'll get. So you can do 20-year, 15-year AMs as well. It's very common in commercial deals to have them balloon anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So you'll have to either refinance or sell at 5 to 10 years to keep the property or to keep paying on it.
Right. So you don't have that kind of peace of mind that a single-family home investor will know that my mortgage payments are $724 a month for the next 30 years. You just don't get that in commercial. You have an interest rate, but it's probably only fixed for 5 or 7 years. And even if they give you they'll stretch the payments over a 20-year amortization, you still have to pay back the loan a lot quicker than that and start again.
Well, yeah, you'll have to pay the balloon payment, and the main reasoning behind that is most people don't keep a commercial property for a 30-year period or a 20-year period. Mm-hmm. Your ROI actually lowers the longer that you keep it. So you can, the way most investors look at commercial properties is they sit there and they go, okay, this is my business plan, and it's a 5-year or 10-year hold, and at that time I'll sell or I'll refinance. And if they really like the property, they may refinance and take the equity out and go buy another property, which is what we call climbing the ladder. But you keep climbing and climbing and building and building. Mm-hmm. And that's an advantage that you have in commercial is the equity build is much more significant. You can build equity in an investment like this extremely quickly over a relatively short amount of time.
If you're really good at operating it, right? Because that's going to be completely dependent on your operating income. Because that's what the bank is going to look at when they're lending to. They're going to look at how much money is this bringing in. They're not really, that's the main thing for them. With a single-family home, they're going to be thinking, well, show me what 6 single-family homes in this neighborhood sold for, and I'll base my value on that. But with a commercial loan, they're going to be paying much closer attention to the income it earns when they decide how much they want to lend you and how much equity they let you pull out. Exactly.
Yes, and that's extremely true. The cash flow basis, or what we call the cash flow analysis method, is the metric that not only brokers use, that the market uses, and that lenders use in order to find the truest value of a property. How much money does it produce, and that's going to determine a lot of its value.
Okay, so I think a lot of our listeners are just starting out now. They've been thinking about investing in real estate for a while. They've got some savings. they know that it can be a really great source of passive income, and that if they invest, for the next 10 years, it can make a huge difference when they get older. Is there anything, what would you recommend that new investors start with when they start climbing the ladder? Should they start with single family? Should it be a condo? Should it be a duplex? Should they jump straight into a larger multifamily? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
The number one thing I always try to do with my clients is I try to put myself in their shoes. So I kind of sit there and I get an idea about their life, and I get an idea about what they're trying to accomplish and where they're going. We have, major milestones in life, which is birth, college, divorce, and death. So we try to, a broker like myself will sit there and look at where you are in your life and try to make an educated guess about, what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish that. So your story, your personal investor story, is very important to me. When you come to me, I sit there and I need to know about, you as a person and how this investment is going to fit into your life. So it's a very interesting question, but I don't really think I can answer it clearly without having a specific person in mind. Some people are absolutely just looking for passive income, in which case I'm going to advise them to go with a higher grade property. Your return is going to be lower, but you don't have time to hustle it. You don't have time to make much larger investments. Some people may not feel comfortable talking to tenants or screening tenants, in which case I'm going to offer a management company. Or I may put in front of you a deal that isn't even multifamily. I may put something in front of you like a self-storage facility or small retail complex, something like that may make more sense for you. But the individual investor story is very important, and I always think that when you're trying to give advice to people, putting yourself in their shoes and really getting an idea of what they're trying to accomplish is perhaps the best groundwork you can do in helping them achieve their goals.
Okay, it's a great answer. Thanks very much. So, listen, we all enjoy our successes in real estate, but I think we learn more from our mistakes. I know I've made lots of mistakes, and I've learned more from the mistakes than I have from the stuff that just went well for me. I mean, are you able to share with us any mistakes you or one of your clients made on a particular deal, and what was learned from it?
Yeah. I think some really good examples of clients that I've had are clients who overplay the hand, who will sit there and think that they're in a stronger position of negotiation than they actually are, and then they end up losing a deal because of it. I've seen that quite a bit. I mean, buyers will come into the market, and I saw that when the market last turned in 2013 from a buyer's to seller's market. They would overplay their hand, and they would think that they can sit there and negotiate a price down by 20%, and they would lose the deal. So I would say that listening to people on the ground, experts in their field about what the market conditions are and what the values are is very important. Another thing that I've seen quite often, and this has more to do with sellers, but they may not disclose everything, and I don't really understand that, especially in the commercial realm, because the likelihood of a buyer finding out something that you didn't disclose is quite high. So all of my sellers, I always tell them up front, you need to tell me everything. You need to tell me about this potential problems, because if there's a problem at your property, I can address it with the buyer, and we can find a solution. If you try to hide it, it could come back to bite you. I had a client who ended up getting sued because they did not disclose that one of their units was not permitted, permitted correctly. And so the new buyer, after they bought it, went ahead and filled out all this paperwork, and the city said, wait a second, I thought, it had this many units, and where did this extra unit come from? And they had to come out and look at it, and they find the new buyer, and the new buyer had to sue and get everything, in order. So it ended up costing the seller a lot more in the long run. So yeah, there's definitely, I would say those two aspects are most important. Is always keep an open mind, and once you have your property, always disclose everything. Always put everything out there, because there's no problem that can't be fixed or monetized, but we have to always try to interpret true value in the market.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a million. We're getting some really good stuff here, James. But look, I'd like to finish on a light note. We're running out of time now. So before we wrap up, can you tell us about something weird or something crazy that you experienced in a transaction, or some incident you had with a seller or some tenants that you can talk to us about?
Yeah. So one time I was selling an apartment deal, and one of the larger apartments was a 3-bedroom apartment, and the seller was also present at the inspection, and he refused to go in the unit. He said, "No, you guys just go in. I'll wait out here." And as soon as you walked into the unit, you knew something was not right, because it just smelled terrible. It smelled absolutely awful. And we see this old lady there, and she was very nice. She said, "Come on in." And we were doing our inspections, and we noticed a couple of cats around, and then one or two in the living room. And then we went into the bedrooms, and 2 of the bedrooms, when we opened the door, a mass exodus of cats just came running out. I mean, probably about 20 or 30 cats had just come running out of these 2 rooms, and she had specifically rented this apartment. She had 1 room to herself, and her cats had 2 bedrooms, and she had built this very elaborate, cat lair with multiple levels and burrow holes and toys. It was amazing, but I don't know how she lived there. It just smelled so terrible. That was probably the most unexpected thing I've ever found during an inspection.
That is weird. And look, that's a good story. And pets can be a nightmare when you're, when tenants move out that have had pets. It can often cost you a fortune to fix the place up again and rent it out, or even if you're buying a property that's had loads of cats in there, or some of the bigger dogs. I mean, they can really do a lot of damage to your property, and it kind of puts you off them, to be honest with you. But it's that sounds like a really extreme case for sure.
It was the most amount of cats I'd ever seen in an apartment ever.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much for your time, James. That's a really useful insight into commercial property. Thanks very much for your time. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do it?
They can reach out to me here at my office in Tampa. My direct line is 813-387-4733, or you can email me at James, James, Vestal, V as in Victor, Estal, at Marcus, Marcus, Millichap, Millichap.com.
All right, I'll put that on the show notes as well in case people want to look it up. But that's it for today. Thank you very much, James, and talk again soon, okay?
All right, great. Thanks, Colin.
So there you go. That was James Vestal from Marcus and Millichap talking to us in episode 23. I thought that was very interesting. I know most of our other podcasts have been focused on buying single-family homes, so I thought it was interesting and refreshing to change a little bit and get a commercial property viewpoint, because a lot of the people I speak to are interested in multifamily, are interested in apartments, or interested in transitioning to that space in the near future, in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So it's important to appreciate the differences in financing, in due diligence, in property management, and in pricing. So Yeah, that was very interesting. I mean, as James said at the beginning of the episode, all are perfectly valid and legitimate ways to build real estate portfolio, to build passive income streams. Lots of people are making plenty of money from both. You can make mistakes on both. You can grow rich or grow poor from both. So they're all valid. But obviously, multifamily, generally speaking, especially the higher end ones with, and not higher end, but higher volume ones with 10, 20, 30 units, is a different level of professionalism, and due diligence is needed. So, I wouldn't recommend that anybody jump straight into a 30 unit unless they're getting, a property manager in place, or unless they're dealing with somebody like James who can package everything up and do a lot of the research in advance. So, very, very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks as always for your support. We're getting a lot of really useful feedback for these last 4 or 5 episodes and the guests we've had. So I'll certainly try and keep that up. Any ideas you have or any ideas for guests, by all means let me know. Just send me an email, give me a call. You'll find my details on torcana.com, torcana.com. Colin.murphy@torcana.com is my email address. And as always, any reviews or ratings you can give us on iTunes or the Play Store is really appreciated. That helps us boost up the rankings compared to the other real estate shows out there. So I'll leave it for now. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We're coming up to the 17th of March. So big shout out to all the Irish people and Irish Americans and wherever else living around the world with an affiliation with Ireland. Hope you enjoy the bank holiday or the celebrations. And I'll speak to you soon. This is Colin Murphy signing out. This recording contains general information relating to the real estate market, and it is for educational purposes only. Buyers should always seek appropriate legal, tax and financial advice from suitably qualified professionals before entering into any real estate transaction. Actual returns from rental properties will always vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. While we have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of any guests on our show, we do not warrant their accuracy. Opinions of the host are not necessarily shared by other employees and partners of Torcana and its subsidiaries.